is how to improve your chances of getting a grant. And then the 7th is reviewing, edit, mock grant. But because we might be a little low on time, we might instead just end up doing like a SMART goal example, just so that you all can get a feel for that, related to evaluation and making sure that you're measuring goals and just writing that out well in your proposal. And then the 8th is questions, Q&A, and closing, should we have time? I do encourage you all to ask your questions, like put your questions in the chat. Again, I can't really see all that well. But I will be sure to.
I can help you. I can help you, Jordan.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I'm going to try to, get through it first. But again, if there's anything I'm not able to get to in our workshop today, I will certainly answer them. And the Southern Black Girls team will follow up with you all. So hopefully that sounds good to everybody and everybody feels good. Everybody feels present. Whew, and take a deep breath as we kind of hop into this. So Posey. So confident, damn, she's lethal. So main grant writing steps. So the first thing that we want to do, and almost just anything, is research. Like, we cannot avoid how important it is to have research in order to make sure that we write our grants. And so when I say research, that takes on a couple of different forms. So you want to identify potential fundraisers, potential funders, your prospects. And so you're looking for institutions that are aligned with your mission, aligned with the work that you are trying to do. And so getting a list of who they are. And so oftentimes when you are looking for funders, you want to be able to identify what they call, I think I froze for a second. Identify what they call a program officer. So you're looking for someone with that title that can support you in answering your questions around any grant opportunities. Another thing when it comes to research is that you want to research the need of what it is that your issue is addressing. So good research, you want to get data that's about 5 years, like not too much. Thank you. You want to get data that's about 5 years old, like not too much more than that. But usually if you do anticipate, for instance, if you're doing like climate or something like that, in that instance, then it is helpful to have some data that you compare to longitudinally to have, maybe like 1995 and maybe 2025. And so you're looking at it in that way. So I just want us to be mindful that research is a major piece of educating your funder, because we cannot assume that they know what we are talking about, or they know that what our issues are in our backyard or whatever it is that we're trying to address. So this is the opportunity to not only educate them, but make sure that you have that foundation as well, because you'll use that as like some talking points, data points, not only your proposals, but when you're recruiting volunteers or whatever the case is. And so then you also want to take it another level when it comes to researching your individual donors. So individual donors are people who are who literally might give $1, $2, $5, $50, and they're in your database. We do not want to discount low dollar donations because sometimes your $5 donors can turn into your $500 donors. And being able to research who they are, when I say research who they are, I mean like find out, where it's a little stalkerish, but find out where they went to school, maybe how many kids do they have, are they married or not, like you're looking for moments of relatability so that when you follow up with them, you all have some talking points and then you're able to learn more about who they are. So that's what we mean by research. And it all goes into your funding goals and your revenue goals and different things of that nature. So the second is your marketing and outreach. You want to be able to contact key organizations and people who can help plan your proposal prior to writing. So we haven't even gotten to the writing part yet. You want to make sure that if you have a program that you want partners or that you are also writing in your proposals who your partners are that can help carry out some of the work that you have. So just want to make sure that that list is prepared and, those relationships are intact before you get to the actual proposal process. And so the third you have is proposal writing. So this is the fun part. Fun can be a bit, subjective for some. But you want to create an evidence-based narrative and a reasonable scope of work. When I say a reasonable scope of work, we'll get into this a little bit more, but you don't want to ever oversell yourself in your own capacity when writing a grant. And so like, as if you are, I don't know, let's say your organization, you are a $250,000 organization, but you're applying for a $2 million grant or something like that. Like if you are to apply for that large grant, you want to make sure you have the capacity to back that up. And you want to build in, like different salaries, like I'm hoping that comes with staffing, whatever the case is in that budget when you apply for those bigger dollars. So, and then the fourth is following up. So you want to follow with your funders, partners, staff, whoever that might be. Follow up is important whether you get the grant or whether you don't. But it's a key part to continuing to build the relationship. Statistically, like it is, grants are competitive, like they just are. And so even if you get rejected, you want to continue to, like, if that's a funding source that is of interest to you, you want to continue to follow up with that individual or with that foundation, so that you can keep, so like it's good to just stay in the know for when following up, so that they'll give you some tips and pointers for when to apply next time, like they can tell you what you did wrong, what how to improve. So moving on. Okay, so next we have Alien Superstar. Power, pull them in closer. So funding sources, where does money come from? So these are some of the primary sources in which money comes from. Your first is your government. So you have federal funding, you have state funding, and you have county and local funding. Now, federal requires that you have a stronger infrastructure in order to support those funds. And so for some grassroots organizations, I don't recommend that they always like immediately jump out to go apply for federal dollars. So, but it's okay to partner with perhaps another organization that might be seeking those dollars and be written into that proposal. And then you all could get some dollars that way. And so county, local dollars sometimes are a bit harder to find and like a bit harder to research. And sometimes it's very relational, and you have to be, in a good standing and have a close relationship with some folks at some of these different, like government institutions and things like that. So government is a little bit harder, a little bit stickier to maneuver, but still, it still can be a pretty good payout, should you put that time into it. The next you have our foundations. So oftentimes when we're referring to grant writing in this context, we're referring to foundations and applying. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. And corporations. So corporations have a social responsibility, but corporations can also be very stingy. And this is also heavily based in relationships. And I've noticed, and this isn't true for everyone across the board, but I've noticed that corporations tend to invest in organizations that kind of have a long-standing history with the community. But corporations can still be pretty sticky. Can be pretty stingy with their dollars. So I'm not super crazy about writing grants to corporations. It's not that you can't. It's just in terms of being strategic with time and when you have limited capacity. They're not at the top of my list when it comes to fundraising strategy, but they can also be good if you have fundraising events, and you're looking for sponsorships, that's a pretty good strategy to increase your revenue. And so the last one we have are individual donors. And so we talked a bit about that, people who, and all funding sources aren't all monetary. So sometimes, we'll call it in-kind donations when someone is maybe able to donate their car, or maybe able to donate furniture, or, just something that doesn't have non-monetary. Well, it has monetary value, but it's considered in-kind when it's not actual liquid dollars. So that is funding sources. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free to put them in the chat. grant research. So, okay, so this is typically a fun one. So move, see how you tested my patience, right? Because grant research really does test you, and because it is a tedious process. And it does take a lot of time, but it is worth the investment in time. So what I have done is I have created a chart, if you will, of different fundraising or grant research databases that you can use. And so here are four. So Instrumental, Foundation Directory Online, Grant Station, and Grant Watch. So the pricing for Instrumental is a bit expensive. So it's about $195 a month. They do have a 14-day free trial available. And so they are pretty popular among nonprofits, and they're popular because when you put in the search criteria for what you're looking for and you're able to narrow it down, it generates a report for you. And so it takes out some of that heavy lifting when doing grant research. And so it does prospecting, it does tracking, it manages reporting, gives you snapshots. And that's also very beneficial too when it comes to funders. Because as you're researching funders, like you want to see like what is their average grant amount, or like how much they typically give, how much they give this year, who did they give it to. It gives you that snapshot information, which is really, really valuable. And then they also list active grant opportunities, which is extremely helpful. So the types of grants that they list in this platform are foundations, government grants, and corporate grants. And so the ease of use is pretty easy. It's pretty user-friendly. Again, more on the expensive side, but folks, it's kind of worth it if you have it to spend. And so the second we have is Foundation Directory Online. They start at $50 a month. And the cool thing that I like about Foundation Directory Online is that if funds are tight for your organization, some of your local libraries might have a subscription to this directory. And so therefore you can go to your local library and access it, which I find to be really, really helpful, especially for those who are just starting off and just getting in the groove of building up their organization. And so it is pretty popular among nonprofits as well. One thing that I do like, similar to Instrumental, they do provide funder profiles, and they have access to over 100,000 funders. And as a fun fact, about 90% of funding opportunities are actually not found on these databases. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And so like some funders, like they find you. And like some private foundations, like we don't get into detail here about the types of foundations, but private foundations, they'll just have like an invitation only to apply to their grant, as opposed to just having a public submission process. So that can be a good place to be in. But yeah, just want to note that fun fact that 90%.
Jordan, you have a question. Are you waiting to the end, or you want to answer it?
I can't. Well, I'm sorry. Can you? Okay, hold on. I see it. Would you say that?
I can
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering where you waited to the end. So the question is, would you say that these are useful for smaller nonprofits, as I find a lot of those have revenue limitations, meaning you have to be bringing in a certain amount to be eligible?
So one, to answer your question, I do find it to be useful for smaller nonprofits. And that because like they can include like your local like community foundation, which they're more inclined to make investments into smaller nonprofits and like more grassroots groups. So I do find it, I'm trying to understand when you say like some of them have revenue limits. Well, yeah. So some of them, like if you have under, $250,000, like that might be a limitation, but there are also foundations who are willing to give you seed money or, like whatever the case to kind of get you going up on your feet. So that's becoming more popular, I will say these days, is like, it's okay if you like some funders, like I feel like Southern Black Girls is one of them, where if you come under like a certain threshold, like it's actually attractive because they want to build and invest in you. So. Yeah, I do think it's worth it. And again, you know, like if you have access to a library, I would say before you spend your money, you know, your hard-earned fundraising dollars, you know, check Foundation Directory online out and see what you're able to find, you know, like because we want to work with the free first before you make full investments. So I fully understand that. Great question. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, and then, yeah, so Foundation Directory, foundations only, and the ease of use is also relatively easy. So the third we have is Grant Station. So Grant Station is about $700 a year with discounts available. So one thing about Grant Station is that they tend to integrate with different memberships. Like if you have, so for instance, like for me, like I'm a part of like the grant writers like association. So like because I have a membership there, then I'm able to like access Grant Station like for free, you know, quote unquote. And so be mindful of like the difference. So it's the asterisk here where it says like discounts available. So they have different partnerships like with different associations. So that's just something to look into. I don't know how extensive it is, but it is just something worth considering if you already have a membership with someone and then you find out like, oh, like they have a partnership with Grant Station and you're able to access that. So now this is like moderately used platform. So they also have funder profiles, project creation, education, such as newsletters and webinars. So I find that Grant Station isn't I don't think it's the most valuable in terms of like researching grants, but it certainly is one of the most valuable when it comes to the education. Like they provide a lot of tools to help you understand like how to write proposals, researching, you know, like how to engage with funders. Like they're very resourceful. Like I see it as like more of like a resource hub around grant writing and like the whole process of that. So it's so they have webinars, live trainings, like it's really fantastic. So in that context. And so the type of grants that they have are like they list foundations, government grants, and corporate grants as well. And so the ease of use is it's okay. Like they have pretty, like you're able to like search and dwindle down. It's not as comprehensive when you want to get to the localized level, I will say. But overall, if you know, you're like, okay, I want to look into like some national opportunities, or I just kind of see want to see what the landscape is. Grant Station it's helpful. And then you have Grant Watch. And so Grant Watch is $200 a year. The popularity is moderate. So like it's okay. It's okay. And so some of the features that they have are detailed grant information, like including pre-application, workshop information, important dates, that is a benefit because like as foundations are saying, hey, we're opening up a grant, you know, register for our webinar, like come see, like I think it's pretty cool that they include like the dates of like when people are or when foundations are having that so that you won't miss it. So that part is kind of cool. And so the types of grants that they have as well are foundations, government grants, corporate grants. It's like the ease of use again, you know, like it's okay. But overall, these are platforms that I suggest you start on, but then also like Google is still a good tool, right? Like for the free, you know, like Google is still a great tool to research, you know, like grants for immigrants, grants for fatherhood, and then, I mean, it's still a very solid tool and you can begin to build out your own database based on what you find through a Google search. So still works. So yeah, are there any questions around grant research? I think there's some time I can kind of start taking some questions.
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So cuff it. Don't miss this roll call, proposal prep. What do you need before you begin to craft your proposal? So this is a bit of a checklist. So there's some, you know, like you might hear some other like grant folks talk about a grant readiness checklist. This is part of that checklist. So want to like at a basic level, you want to make sure you have your IRS determination letter or the group that you're working with, you know, whoever that might be, if you are a grant writer here on this call, just legal proof that you are an established 501c3 organization. So that's pretty basic in its understanding. The second is you want to make sure you have financial statements. So you want to have your 990s, you want to have your income balance sheet, your income and balance sheet, et cetera, because it's important that that just for good financial health purposes, you want to be able to make sure that your finances are able to tell the right story. So that's really important. The next thing is key staff bio and qualification. So everybody doesn't have this, but I think it's useful to have because some foundations will ask for it as part of the full application. And so you want to, even if your staff are volunteers or like super volunteers, you can include that as well. But it's just, they want to make sure that whatever program that you are designing or that you're running, and that you have the right people in place in order to see it through. So that's why they ask for key staff bio and qualifications. And so then the next thing you want to have is a list of your board of directors. So this is also really important because a lot of funders are interested in seeing how diverse your board is. So diversity is the hot thing these days. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep a updated list of who your board members are, who they're affiliated with, what their affiliation might be, like what is their role in the board, their contact information, what's their number, where do they live, like all those things play a role into making sure that you have an updated board list, like what's the percent that's female, what's the percent that's male, what's the percent that's African-American, Hispanic, white, whatever the case is, they want to be able to see the diversity in your board of directors list. So really, really key. Next, you want to have your current annual operating budget. And so that's just key. Like funders want to see, did you all, what are you all anticipating for the year? This helps also you as a nonprofit kind of see where your gaps might be, where your commitments are related to fundraising. And so this is just a really great tool and a guide to have, following your next fiscal year. And so then the next thing that you want to have prior to writing your grant are your list of partnerships and collaborations. Now, a lot of people, I work with different groups. A lot of people don't have this either, but it's good to just keep, out of good practice. It is good to just list who your partners are, y'all, who you collaborate with, because that's a question that funders ask. They're they do ask who are you in partnership with. So when you're just able to have this information just stored somewhere, it's up to date. It not only helps funders, but it also helps, in terms of succession and just make sure that people understand the history of the relationships that you have. So I really believe in a good partnership database list, if you will. So, and then the last thing you want to have are letters of support if asked. So sometimes, depending on I see this in the federal grant writing space, where if you are applying for a federal grant or just, it can just be a regular grant as well, but they will ask, if you list your partners, they're going, they want proof that you are in relationship with folks that you say that you're in relationship with. So this is where the letter of support comes in, and it'll include their letterhead. And just a brief synopsis or summary of you all's relationship or just something along the sort, but they're just primarily looking for this as another measure of you ensuring that you tell the truth about who you're in partnership with, because a lot of times folks are just looking at these looking at your proposals blindly, so they really don't know if are you telling the truth or not. It's just one of those tools that help kind of verify that. Any questions related to proposal prep? Okay, awesome. Well, we're getting through this. So heated, they want some time on it now. I want to flaunt it. So this is the time to shine, y'all. These are your elements of a proposal. It's a few parts that you can have in a proposal. Different funders will ask questions in many different ways, but what won't change is your foundation. And so this is really, you put in that time to your foundation, and it'll make applying for grants a lot easier. So the first thing that you want to have when writing your proposal is it's your organization background. So it's really referencing that's your mission and your vision, which a lot of folks have. So I don't think I have to go too in depth with that, but that's, mission and vision, very key. And so the second thing that you want to acknowledge and write about is your needs statement, or some people call it statement of need. And what that is that this is your moment to really explain why your program exists, why your organization exists, and what the data is saying around that. So the way I like to approach my data is I like to start broad, and then I like to bring it, I like to hone it in. And when I say broad, I mean what is the general national data saying? And then how can I narrow that down to maybe what the state data is saying, and so on and so forth, so that you can kind of take me through a journey of how we got to your organization specifically that is helping to fill in that gap and have the impact that it has. So data is really, really important here. You want to demonstrate the depth of the need within your community. And I want to say it's kind of negative to say the lasting negative effects resulting from it, because there can be some positives too. But it's important that when you communicate the need, it puts a sense of urgency in funders. And so you want to detail the opportunity you have to make a difference, and the positive change that you hope to enact because of this. So that is your need statement and/or statement of need. So really, really good to open up with that. And let me back up too. There's some people who, if you really want to go that extra mile, before you get to writing your organization background, there's some folks who include a cover letter, that kind of gives them they'll address it as, the recipient name, and then the funding organization name. And it'll be a salutation. And so really what it is just the cover letter gives you a quick overview. It thanks the funder for taking the time to read the proposal. And then in some cases, it can include a bit of a table of contents. And then you kind of list out how your proposal is going to read, which helps them jump to immediately what you're writing. And then, you just have a thank you and a closing. So I just want to preface by saying some people, like I said, if you want to go above and beyond, some people have a cover letter that they decide to attach to their proposal to help strengthen it. So I hope that makes sense. So bouncing back to the project program description. So this is going to be your high level overview of your project and your intended results. So it should be anywhere between a half page to a full page, but not too much longer, because you'll cover additional content in your proposal, more in depth a little bit later on. So you want to outline your project and how it's aligned with your mission and what makes your organization qualified to see it through to completion. And so you also, if you want to go take that extra step, you can include references to past successes and relevant expertise, which I highly recommend that you do, because it's just good that people, if you are, working a program, you want to tell people what it is that you've already been able to accomplish with numbers and the data that hey, we were able to do this, and we're writing in this proposal because we want to get more money to scale in this way. So I definitely believe in past, present, and future being demonstrated in a proposal. It just makes things a lot easier to follow. So hopefully that makes sense. Are there any questions so far? Okay. All right. So, okay. So great. So then, as part, oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I typed it in the chat, but I just realized you can't see the chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
My name is Tanisha Corporal. I had a local foundation here in Atlanta ask me for a letter of intent or a letter of interest first.
A LOI?
Yes, LOI. So are you going to cover that, or is that similar to this? Does it include some of these elements or less of these elements, or what?
So I don't cover it here, but I can actually follow up with you. There's a tool that I use for LOIs. Because basically what it is it's a quicker version of this long
Is she just frozen on my end or?
No, she's frozen. I thought it was me too. No, she's
Yeah. Uh-oh, what happened?
Oh, you have frozen, Jordan. Okay, there you go. We can hear you again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I don't know where it left off at, but I was just saying that I'm happy to follow up with you with some tools that can help you craft your LOI in a more like in a more succinct way.
okay. I'll reach out to you. Thanks, Jordan.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and I have my contact information at the end of the slide too as well. So whoever gets to who first, but congrats on the interest, like with the LOI, like they, you're
Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also scared. What Tamar say? Nerve sighted. So yeah, we don't know.
don't be scared. That's awesome. So as part of your like when you're writing your narrative, like you want to include like your strategy and like methodology. And so this will begin to kind of cross over a little bit into the evaluation, but you want to be sure that you list your outcomes and your objectives. Like pretty much this will kind of lead into like your SMART goals. But in terms of your outcomes, you want to align your outcomes of your program to your statement of need. Excuse me. And then you want to be clear about what issues does your project address. What is the desired result or end goal? And your outcomes should be solution oriented. They should be realistic. I can't say that enough. They should be realistic, yet, like challenging in a sense, and relevant to the population that you serve. I think that one goes without saying, but realistic, I can't stress that enough because I review proposals, and I'm, like it just keep it realistic, y'all. Like, we want you to go, we want you to do the thing, but again, like I said, you don't want to ever oversell yourself, and be like, we can make 100,000 phone calls and you only have 3 volunteers. Like that might not really be the move. So just want to be mindful of your outcomes. And you also want to be mindful of like your objectives. So your objectives, must be achieved in order for your project what objectives must be, achieved in order for your project to succeed? Like what are kind of like those steps? And so you want to consider diving into your project, perhaps into stages, like if that makes sense for your program. And so they should be designed in such a way that like when you are done, like they will lead to your desired outcomes. So you just want to make sure like outcomes and objectives, like, you want to kind of keep that in mind as you discuss, like goals. And one thing I don't talk about here that I think is really good to mention, that if you are having some challenges like developing your program, one thing that is helpful is a logic model. So again, I don't talk about that, and the term can be intimidating, and when you go online, it can also be intimidating. But what a logic model helps you do, one, it helps you think through your program, like from pretty much like from start to finish. So like it addresses, like what are the resources that you need that goes into the program that you desire, like is that staffing, how much money, is it volunteers? And then you address like the short-term outcomes of like, okay, what can this immediately solve for? And then it goes more so into like, what are you looking into, like ultimately like long-term goals? What are the outcomes of that? So a logic model helps you organize your thoughts, which helps you write your narrative, write your proposal a little bit better. So again, don't talk about that here, but I do want to add that, like kind of like sub that in between into here. And then another thing that if it makes sense for your program is to include a timeline. So a timeline is very helpful because grants, like they happen on a cycle. And so you don't want too many funding gaps happening, or really none, if possible, when your program starts and when it ends. So having a timeline and letting fund, like communicating when your program's going to start, like having those conversations, but them seeing it visibly in your proposal is helpful. So I just want to be like make you all aware of that as well. So any questions so far before we get into like a quick word on evaluation and budget narrative. Okay. All right, so cool. So then moving on to evaluation. So you do want to be mindful when you are running a program. First of all, funders like program. I know programs. I don't really talk a lot about general operating support versus program support. General operating dollars are harder to come by. The philanthropic landscape is shifting, a little bit, at a time incrementally. But otherwise, and we call that unrestricted funds. But when you are like most funders do like programs, which are restricted funds. So I just want you all to be mindful. Like I know like we all have operational overhead costs. It's important, so general operating support, very, very valuable dollars, but just in the context of like getting a program funded, starting to get you all up off the ground, having a specific program is very necessary and preferred for a lot of funders. So just want to seed that as well. So back to the evaluation. So you want to be mindful too of what metrics that you will be using to demonstrate success. So this will be, unique to your organization and to your project goals. So this might look like a pre and post survey for some. It might look like a focus group for others. It might look like some, like a longitudinal study, like it might be like a years long study. You just want to be it might be how many sign-ins, like do we get at an event? You want to be mindful of what those metrics are, and you want to be sure that you collect that data. I cannot stress that enough. If you want the dollars to keep flowing, and you want to stay, good relationship, you want to continue to convey the importance of why your program needs to exist, please prioritize data. Please prioritize evaluating. It's just really key. And so helping to set SMART goals, we'll cover that a little bit in a little bit. But setting SMART goals ahead of time will help you to develop expectations, like for your results. So you want to provide details on your plan, on your evaluation plan. You want to illustrate a strong level of accountability to the funder. And so that's what I have to say about evaluation. You want to, just always keep that program evaluation top of mind. Very, very useful. And so the last thing as well is your budget or budget narrative. And so one thing, there are two types of budgets. And so you have your organization or operating, like budget, and then you have your project or program budget. And so the difference between that is like your operating budget is the financial statements that is submitted annually for approval by your organization's board. And so it includes a projection of like your income and expenses for the organization's fiscal year. So, good to have that. But then you also have your program budget. And so your program budget, it enumerates the resources required to carry out your program, which is being proposed for funding. And so I often find, like developing program budgets are typically like a bit easier. So some people also ask, like, how do we formulate how much to ask when we are applying for grants? So my first response to that is make sure that you have clarity on the max, like typically like the average grant size for a funder like that they give out. So if they typically don't give past, I don't know, like $100,000, it might not be wise to ask them for $200,000. Now, you can have a $200,000 budget reflected, like when you're crafting the program budget, and then you'd be like, but we're asking you for $100,000. Like that's how you should demonstrate that. But just like be thoughtful and do a little due diligence and do a little research when it comes to making sure that you're creating an ask within reach of the foundation, and as well as formulating an ask that makes sense to your capacity and incremental growth. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And then your budget narrative is just, that's when you can make a line item, but you want to explain the line item. And so some people will ask for like a little bit more explanation, like around like the budget, like your line item when you create that. So any questions related to the elements of a proposal? Okay. All right. All hearts and minds are clear. Okay. Sounds good. Cool. Okay, so ways to improve chances of getting a grant. Energy, only double lines we cross is $signs. So funder motivation. You just want to make sure that you're writing in a compelling way, in a succinct way that makes people excited about your work. There's nothing more exciting than like being educated about an issue area that I didn't really know much about. But I'm like, oh, okay, like this actually has potential. This is mission aligned with, you know, what we might fund. So it's like wonderful, beautiful, the synchronicity. So just, you know, writing in a compelling way, and just being and making sure that the work that you're doing is also impactful and meaningful, because people love to see like, okay, if we give you this, like, what is that impact going to be? Like, it's human nature to want to make an impact. Like, that's what we're doing the work that we do. The second thing is we want to build a relationship with the funder, AKA program officer. Certainly can't stress that enough. And some of us might just, you know, some larger institutions like education institutions who have a full development team are able to just crank out grants practically like nonstop. And some have relationships, some don't. Take the time to build relationship with your program officer, but also take the time, if it is a grant that you really do want, I always recommend to people, one, attend the webinar. We don't go to a lot of webinars, like not for real. But it is like, they are telling us like the keys to helping us get the grant that we are seeking. So please go to the webinars, and use that as a tool to follow up with the program officer who might be assigned over that fund. You know, it's like to ask questions, and that can be a point to build relationship with them. I always believe in inquiring, asking at least a question or two, touching base before like fully submitting an application, so that I'm just not completely nobody to them. Like as a new prospective grantee. So just, yeah, I can't stress that enough. The next thing is list partnerships and collaboration history. That will certainly improve your chances. They want to know that you're in relationship with folks in the same issue area as you, or geographic area, you know, whatever the case might be. So that looks really, 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 really strong. You also want to provide strong documentation. So your proposal is great. Like I said, if you want to go the extra step, include a cover letter. That's also helpful too. There are some people who attach impact reports, you know, like what we were able, you know, like a one pager or annual report of like what they were able to accomplish, and it's aesthetically, visually pleasing. And so, you know, like they add supplemental documents to strengthen their proposal. So it helps. Also, citing sources and data. This is a little bit extra. I am a little bit extra because I am a researcher as well. So being able to cite your sources, it only strengthens your credibility. And so, and people feeling more confident about investing in your program because it's just well-researched. And you want to have, again, data points, talking points when talking with people, because it's nothing like saying, oh, like, well, 20% of youth voters like did not vote in the 2020. Like, you want to be able to just be able to have that data and be able to cite it and somewhere in your proposal. And then you also want to keep an updated website. Y'all, I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please invest. And it doesn't have to mean invest just in monetarily, but just take the time to build out just a nice, clean website. Make sure that it's updated, because funders, like especially some that don't know you, like they're going to go to your social media pages, and they're going to go to your website, because, you know, that's how we are. You know, somebody tell us, oh, look up such and such. We go to LinkedIn, we go to Instagram, we go to Facebook, you know, and they do the exact same thing. So please keep your website updated. Make sure, you know, like whatever color scheme, like make sure the quality of your photos are rich and sharp. You know, it all makes a difference. So these are just like a couple of ways a few ways to improve and strengthen your chances of getting a grant. So we don't have a lot of time. But I think I'm going to use a very simple example, a SMART example. And so I mentioned, you know, like having SMART goals as part of your programming. And so when I say SMART, I mean specific goals. You want it to be measurable. You want it to be attainable, i.e., realistic. You want it to be relevant. What is that? Also, like, relevant can take on a couple of meanings, but also, just given like the current climate, funding ebbs and flows. And so anyway, and then also time, what are the time restraints that we're working within? So I have a smart example that I'm just going to read out loud. And so this is, and it's simple. So it is an after school program. And so without a lot of context, this is the sentence. By the end of 2024, 200 youth ages 6 to 15 in Oconee County will be enrolled in a reading enrichment after school tutorial program. That is the SMART goal. By the end of 2024, 200 youth ages 6 to 15 in Oconee County will be enrolled in a reading enrichment after school tutorial program. So what would be specific about that? So what's specific is like, oh, okay, reading enrichment enrollment program, after school program. Like that's specific, that's the program. What is measurable in this example? Okay, what's measurable is that we plan on having 200 youth enrolled. Like that's the measurement. We want to do that. So is it attainable? So, okay, by the end of 2024, you all want to do that. So what is a way in which you can make sure that it's attainable? Well, according to 2022 and 2023 data that we had, we enrolled 180 students. So we believe that it's attainable to enroll 200 students due to Oconee County school partnerships and with the potential support of, having this funding so that we can expand our program. That's attainable. Relevant. It's relevant because the data says there are a limited number of resources available for after school programs for youth ages 6 to 15. So our program is really helping to fill a gap. Like it is relevant, and especially relevant to the community in which you are serving. And so the time-based aspect is that it is the end of 24. So that is their goal by the end of 2024 is to have 200 youth enrolled. So does that make sense for a SMART goal? Any questions around that? No? Okay. All right, y'all. So are there any other questions, anything that's on your mind, on your heart, on your spirit?
Hi, thank you so much. This was amazing. Some really good information. I do have a quick question about the chat, artificial intelligence that people are using now.
Oh, ChatGPT and other things, yes.
Yes. And how that can be used to kind of help with the grant proposals and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I think ChatGPT is really useful for kind of helping you lay out, I think it helps you outline and frame really well. And so I think you should use that to your benefit. I also think if I were seeking grants and I'm like, okay, what are some possible metrics, and so that we can be sure that our, program is being evaluated well. I would type in a list of metrics, or a list, tools to evaluate program data, tools to evaluate a program. And so then it might generate, give you some options of how you might want to think about the different tools that you want to use to evaluate your program. So I think it's useful. Some people are intimidated by it. And they might see it as a threat, but I definitely see it as a supplement to you all, building out the sustainability of your programs. Now, one thing, ChatGPT and other sources, they're still not that great at data. So when it first came out, the data was really reliable, but studies have been showing that over time, the data is less reliable. So I, still take some things with a grain of salt, still use trustworthy research sites. But I don't personally, I would not get my data from GPT and those sources like that. It just, the studies haven't been that great lately. But that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, yeah, so nobody else is going to ask.
I love it.
question is like, for admin fees. Sometimes when you get grants, some do allow an admin fee, but they don't tell you like how much, we've done a little bit of research around it, and we saw like 21% was the average. But I was on another kind of webinar, and this person said 15. Like, what do you think? And I know it has to be specific because some grants don't even allow admin fees, but the ones that do.
Yeah, some don't allow it. And I literally, as you were talking, I was like, I like anything. A lot like funders don't like, typically the 20% is like 20%, operational, 80% else for programming, like should be used for like programming and like to support the program. And that's kind of like a general rule of thumb too, is like, even when you are, like your budget, and like your budget should be able to like tell a good story. Like there it is, even though it's kind of odd, but like they know that we need money in order to like to have staffing and benefits and, all kinds of things. But funders don't typically like to see like 50-50, like 50% on staff, 50% on programming. So like you always want to do your best, like as much as you possibly can, like keep your operational expenses like around the 20 to, depending on how large your organization is, could like be up to 30%, like if it's again like large and it's justifiable. But I would just say general rule of thumb, 20%, like more like operations and things like that, like in relation to your program, like when you're writing out your program budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great question. Okay, any other questions? If not, we will wrap up. And so I do want to leave you all with I don't know if anybody has ever heard of like the rest deck by like the Nat Ministry. First of all, I love a deck. I love a card. Okay, I love a card. And so I have it's literally, okay, so this is like a set of like beautiful, beautiful cards just made by this Black woman based in Atlanta, actually. And so I'm a super fan of this rest deck. And so I totally believe in rest. I think we should all have more of it. I think it's all Black women on this call. And so if there is another volunteer, I would love to leave us with a rest affirmation before we depart. And so if there's anyone who wants to come off mute and tell me to stop, I will then pull a card as I shuffle.
Stop.
Okay. Top or bottom of the deck?
Bottom.
Okay. Pulling from the bottom. Let's see. There is information in my dreams, in my dream space, and in my daydreaming. There is a collection of wisdom and knowledge waiting for you in a dream space. What if your body has a message of liberation, but can only offer it while you're in a rested state? Examine the ways you can slow down right now and forever. Go into the dream space often. All right. Thank you, y'all. On that note, I appreciate you all for coming. Thank you to the Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium team. I hope you all have a wonderful and restful week.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. We hope you all enjoyed, and be sure to join us each and every week. Not each and every week, each and every last Thursday of the month for our Sage Circle. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful, Jordan. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.